In progress.
It's a mimer from Shabbos Parshas Bereshis. It's also Mefarch Machodesh Chodesh Marcheshvan Tavshin Lamed Gimel, which is like the Mamorim this year. The Dvar Malchus are going to go also according to Art Kvias Tavshin Lamed Gimel. It was the same setup, that it was like the days of the week fell out in the same days of the month, like now. Viכולו השמיים והארץ כל צבאם, it said that the Eibishter concluded the heavens and the earth and all of its hosts. We read this yesterday in Kriyas HaTorah, the beginning of Parshas Bereshis. The Isa Medrash Rabbah, it's brought down in Medrash Rabbah, and Ksiv, it says that Medrash Rabbah is explaining the language where it says Vayichulu. What's the meaning, what's the hint in the idea of Vayichulu? Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, L'chol tichla, everything that is called a conclusion, tichla, one of the ways how the meaning of this pasuk is, anything that has like an end, the ra'isi case. I've seen the end, and I know that it's limited, it has a stop to it. On the other hand, it goes on in Kapitel Kuf Yutes and Tillim, Dvar Malchus says, your mitzvahs, on the other hand, are very broad, meaning they have no end. And the Medrash goes on to explain that pasuk. Everything has sikusim. What does sikusim mean? Kates, gvul, uzman. An end, a boundary, and time, a limit. Shemayim v'aretz yeshem sikusim. Heaven and earth have sikusim. Chutz medavar echad she'en li sikusim. Except for one thing that has no end, has no border, has no time limit. The Eis is a Torah. This is going on Torah. Shenemar, as it says, Arukam eretz midah. It's measured. The measure of the Torah is longer than the earth. Urechava miniyam, and the broadness of the Torah is more broad than the sea. And that's why it says Vayichulu. Vayichulu, from the word completed, ended, stopped. There is a stop to it. It doesn't go further. So everything in creation, Viכולו השמיים והארץ, the heavens, the earth, and also obviously that's everything in them, v'kol tzvam, all of them have an end. That's how the Medrash explains the meaning of the word Vayichulu, ended. So the Rebbe asks on this, seemingly, according to Chassidus, the heavens and the earth don't really have an idea of an end. He says, and he says in line 7, we need to understand what he says, that the heavens and the earth has an end. In the world, there's also that which we draw down, that's in a way that's without an end and without a boundary. As it's known, there's the drawing down of Hashem's will into the world. Hashem wanted the world to be. And because of his will, that's how the world was created. And that will is constantly in the world and animating it and recreating it every moment. So that means in the world, there's something that's without a boundary. Like it says in the pasuk, Bereshis bara. So there's the famous question, all the Mefarshim ask, that Bereshis, bara, the word Bereshis doesn't fit very well. Rashi explains it in different ways, and other Mefarshim explain it in different ways. The explanation of the Onkelos is V'tirgum Onkelos, and the Onkelos explained or translated Bekadmin Bra, that with early on he created. Now, the simple meaning of this Targum Onkelos to say that that's the first thing that he created, or in the beginning he created, etc. But Kabbalah, Chassidus explains that the Kadmin goes on a certain level. But before we go to explaining that certain level, he's going to say parenthetically a different level that Bereshis indicates. Noisef ala Pirish betargum Yonason b'chachmasam. The Targum Yonason ben Uziel, when he translates Bereshis bara Elokim, he says that since we know that Bereshis is associated with Chachma, like we always bring down in Chassidus, Reish is Chachma, Yiras Hashem. So Chachma is associated with the word Reishis, and that's the first of the spheres, the first of the Oilamus, the Seder Ishtalshlus, Natzil's Bri Yitzirasiyah. So what it means, Bereishis Bara Lakim, the Eibishter created, according to the Targum Yonason, with the sphere of Chachma, with the idea of Chachma. So in addition to that explanation of Bereishis Bara is going on the level of Chachma, what he created, in addition to that, it is referring to, according to the Targum Onkelos, that says, Bekadmin Bra. So he says on line 13, the Koy ala Rotzen Shenikra Kadmin. It's referring to the will. The will of the Eibishter is called Kadmin because it precedes everything. Before there could be any world, not just the physical world, but the spiritual world and all the spheres, there has to be the level of Hashem's will. So it's called Kadmin, it's called the preceding level. So when the Onkelos explains Bereishis Bara means Bekadmin Bara, he's really, according to Pnimius HaTorah, explaining that Hashem created the world with the level of Kadmin, with the level of Rotzen. We know the level of Rotzen is without a boundary. That's why Chassidus brings down that the Rotzen doesn't have a particular limb, an organ in which it becomes enclosed, not like other powers of the soul that have intellect is in the brain, emotions are in the heart, movement is in the hands, walking is in the feet, sight is in the eyes, etc., etc. Rotzen is throughout the entire body, and that's why as soon as he wants to do something, that limb immediately moves because the Rotzen is all over, it has no limitation. So too in the spiritual worlds, the level of Rotzen is without boundary, and because of that also, it can create the world Yesh Me'ayin, because there's no limitations as far as the Rotzen is concerned. So since we know that Rotzen is involved with the creation of the world, so how could you say that the world has a boundary? It doesn't have a boundary. There's the Rotzen in the world, which has no boundary. Now the Rebbe is going to take it a step higher. That really, what this pasuk is referring to is also a level of tainug and delight. And delight is even more so that it has no boundary. So he says in line 14, we can add to this, in addition to the simple explanation, that Veichulus in the expression conclusion, it indicates the idea of boundary, and yesh negama pirush, Veichulu is also from the word delight. Why does it have to do with delight? Veichulu is from the word kalois hanefesh, the soul's outpouring, which means a very great enjoyment and pleasure and delight that the soul wants to leave the body because of its intense feeling of enjoyment. And that is because the Shabbos is associated with the word Vayechulu, meaning this powerful delight. The way we celebrate and mark Shabbos is with delight. That's why it says concerning Shabbos, there was the idea of Hashem's delight. Hashem delighted in his creation. He enjoyed his creation. You called the day of Shabbos the most special and beloved day, meaning showing on something that Hashem enjoyed and delighted in and took pleasure in, which is what we say in Shabbos davening. This is also what it says, Novi says you shall call Shabbos delight. Why is that so? Because of the word Vayechulu Hashemayim. Because on the day of Shabbos, so when the world comes down, Shemayim Ba'aretz Chol Tzavam, it comes down in every part of the world, in the heavens, in the earth, and all of his hosts, Bechinas HaTainug, the level of the light of above, the level of Vayechulu, Va'ad Kfi Shenimshach Lamata B'Gashmis, until it actually, the way it comes down here in the physical world. What is it? How does it manifest? The fact that Hashem delighted in the creation of the world. Other Mamar Chassidus go into it at great length, how just like when a person concludes work that he did, So even though he may enjoy doing the work at the time, but the true enjoyment, the true pleasure is at the conclusion. When he's done and he sees the finished product, that's the true delight. That's the same thing that Hashem Kaviyachol experienced in the world when he concluded the creation. And therefore it manifests itself also down here below, that we have to delight in Shabbos, that we have a mitzvah to delight in it with eating and drinking, with juicy meat and old wine, aged wine. So going back to our question about Shemayim v'Oretz being limited, but delight is not a matter of limitation. The idea of delight, that Chassidus explains that delight is even higher than will. So if we say that will has no boundaries, so for sure delight is without any boundaries whatsoever. It's in a way that's beyond any type of boundary limitation, especially according to what's known. The top of page Vav. The idea of the seventh day in Sfiris, and we mentioned Sfiris HaBina, that's the Sfira of Bina, going from Milmata L'Maila, starting from below to above. So then Bina is number 7. I'm sorry, sometimes it's called number 8, depending how you count the Sfiris, if you're counting it from Malchus, or you're counting Das involved, etc., etc. In addition to the fact that Bina, it includes in it all the all the 6 attributes of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, which is Shisha Yom, the 6 days, Shisha Ktsaves, which are called also the 6 edges, the 6 ends, just like in the physical world, everything must have 6 sides to it. Top, bottom, and all 4 sides. The same thing in the spiritual world, the 6 ends. And the source of the 6 ends in the physical world is the 6 midas above that everything must be made up of. So how do we know that Bina includes all of this? Like it's known concerning that the mother crouches over the chicks. That means the mother is a level of Bina, and the chicks are the midas. And that the fact that we're saying the mother crouches over the chicks, that means that Bina includes in it all the midas. But in addition to Bina including all the midas, it is a higher level that's removed from them. The level of Bina that's removed from the midas, that's the inner level of Bina, that's the inner level of Atik Yomin. Vizgalus Atik Bina Davka, in the revelation of Atik, specifically in Bina, like we explained in the previous mime about Lahavin the Simcha story that we learned during Chalamoid. So, because we spoke about that in Bina, there's 2 levels. There's the level that's associated with the world, it's the level of understanding, the level that comes down, and then there's the level that's completely transcendent above everything, because it has to do with the level of delight. Like we explained also in the last mimer, that Shofar of Rosh Hashanah is a level of Bina, and therefore it has the concept of it can be in the times of the second Beis HaMikdash. When it comes on Shabbos, we mentioned it can only be blown in the Beis HaMikdash, which is also the level of Bina, but not outside the Beis HaMikdash. And through the shofar, it's drawn down below from the essential delight of the Eibishter, that's beyond the type of delight that's a complex delight. Meaning, a complex delight means there is the delight that one delights because of something else. So there's a mixture. There's the delight, and there's the thing that's giving him the delight. So another idea of delight, a level that's mortgage, that I'm aware and I have enough of a consciousness of self that I'm enjoying something. If I have enough of a consciousness of self that I'm enjoying something, then it's not pure delight. Pure delight is so overwhelming that I completely lose myself in the experience because the delight is without a limit. So on the Rosh Hashanah, because shofar is the idea of bina, we are drawing down Hashem's essential delight beyond this complex delight, beyond this delight where I sense myself. Therefore, the Kivan Sheyom HaShabbos kosher M'chiras Atik, top of page Zayin. Since Shabbos is connected with the level of Atik, Shenet, and Kol Seder Ishtalshus, it's removed from the entire chain order of descent. So surely it's something that's beyond measure and boundary because it comes from this level of Atik, from the level of delight. How can it be included in what it says, Vaikulu? Like the Rebbe always says, when there's two explanations in the same word, they need to have a connection between them. On the one hand, you're saying, Vaikulu means it has an end to it. On the other hand, you're saying Vaikulu is from the word kloisan nefesh, delight, enjoyment, pleasure. That's totally beyond bounds and totally beyond limitations. So how these two things fit together? Is it a delight which shows an unlimited, or is it something that has limitations and ends to it? Any questions? So we're holding on Ois Beis, third page of the copies, page Zayin. We need to initially explain the quality and the advantage of drawing down the will into the world by first bringing a metaphor and an analogy from the power of will that's to be found in a person's nefesh. Though it's a soul power, so the very fact that you're saying it's a power of the soul, power already says it's a limited thing. It's a rotzen, it's not something else. That already gives it a limitation. Despite that general limitation, it's not like other koiches that he's going to explain. That's a separate entity outside of the soul. And he'll explain what he means. By the entire idea of will is the leaning and the rushing of the soul to a particular thing to want it. In other places it says, other soul powers like intellect or emotions, I possess something which is called intellect. I possess love. That's what it means. It has that koyach. I don't possess rotzen. Rotzen is when the soul moves towards something, whatever that something is. Food, mitzvahs, chachma, whatever. When my soul, building a house, whatever my soul is drawn to or is directing itself to, that's a rotzen. So you cannot slice and separate the rotzen from the nefesh. That's why a lot of times in Tanakh and Chumash we find that the word nefesh and rotzen is used interchangeably. Ein nafshi ba'amazeh. Nafshi, my soul is not in this person. What does that mean? I have no will. We see that will and soul is used interchangeably in that type of way. So he says, it can contrast that with other soul powers. Line 11, it's not similar to the power of Chochmah and intellect. Shehi metzias la'atzma chutzul ha'nefesh. Chochmah and Seichel is a separate entity outside and other than the nefesh. And the proof of this is, Shemashe Hiskil, if a person comes up with an idea, so now that I came up with that idea, the person doesn't have to be around for that idea to continue existing. So then, this idea remains even when the nefesh does not interact anymore with intellect. He's not thinking about this idea anymore. Now he's busy doing something else. He's going to the store to pick up some milk. He is not involved in the idea, but the idea that he came up with now exists because intellect is something separate than the nefesh. As opposed to will, when the nefesh, the soul, leaves the will, if rotzen means I'm interested in this, I want this. If his nefesh leaves that, so then there's no more will. Oh, you don't want this anymore, right? I can put it back. That's what happens when the nefesh and the rotzen separate. Then the rotzen dissipates. It's similar, perhaps a little bit, to the relationship, the difference between oil and shefa. Shefa, we say, hashpa, let's say, water. Water flows from, whatever, a spring. It gets separated from the spring. Fine, the water still exists over there. It doesn't have to be connected to its source. But oil and ma'or, if light is separated from the source, from the ma'or, from the luminary, from the sun, that's it. The light stops being in existence. Why is that so? Why is that so by rotzen? That when the nefesh leaves the rotzen, there's no more rotzen. He says in line 16, because the entire being of will is only that the nefesh wants through his power and through his level of will. And if he doesn't, if the nefesh leaves, then there's no more will. And this is also understood concerning the will of Hashem above. It is Hashem leaning towards, connecting lirtzois to want, lahatzil to emanate atzilus, v'livroi ha'olamus, and to create the worlds. Therefore, it's unlimited because it has that very strong connection with Hashem's essence. Chachma, even though Hashem is connected, but since it's not something that must be connected in and of its very nature, so therefore it doesn't have so much of the Ein Sof. Will is like, there's no will without the one who wants. So therefore it's infinite. So he says in line 21, so even though this is the nature of will, still in all, in will there's differentiations. In the will itself of Hashem, there's a difference between the will that the Eibishter had in the creation of the world to the will that Hashem has that we should learn Torah and do mitzvahs. The will of the creation of the world is only his external will. It's only a ray. Therefore, it's still connected to the boundaries and limitations of the world. Like the level of Saiv Kalam, that's still connected to the worlds. That's why it's called Saiv Kalamin. Saiv, even though we're saying it's transcendent, it's encompassing, it's beyond the limitations of the world, but we're saying Saiv Kalamin, so it's still relating to the worlds. The same thing, the Ratzon, which is Saiv, that's responsible for the creation of the world, is still a limited level. And that's why Saiv Kalam is the one that's responsible for the creation of the world, because it still has a connection with the world. And that's external will. But the Ratzon of Torah mitzvahs is is totally beyond any connection and association with the worlds. And Hashem's will in Torah mitzvahs is even higher than the level of the encompassing light that was involved in the creating of the world, Yesh Ma'ayin. Why is that so? Because that will that Hashem has in Torah mitzvahs is the inner will of Hashem, not like the external will. Hashem doesn't have a will in the world itself. He has a will to create a world so that Yidden should do Torah mitzvahs in the world. So it's a subsidiary will. It's a chitzonius of Ratzon. It's not where he's completely invested in. His investment is not in the world. His investment is in the will of Torah mitzvahs. And that's the Pnimius HaRatzon. And wherever the Pnimius HaRatzon is, Shabai Melubish Pnimius HaTainuk, in the inner will, where he's what he really wants for its own sake, is because this is what he really has a delight in. Shazel Loid HaKar V'Ziv, in the will. That is the Pnimius HaRatzon. It's not just a level of array, it's a level of the essence. That's what Hashem says, through Torah, you grab hold of me, specifically myself, meaning not as Havaya or as Elokim. Oisi kamay anoichi, just like the level of anoichi in the phrase anoichi havai lekecha, which is the beginning of the tzivui of the Yidden today, the Yidden by Matan Torah, the beginning of Aseres HaDibros, which includes in it the entire Torah. Shezoi bechina shalamayla mishemes. The level of anoichi is beyond all names. The same thing when we say oisi atem loichim, that with studying Torah, we take the Eibishter himself, we take the level that's beyond all names. The Lo Yispas B'Shem, Lo Yisramas B'Shum Ois V'Koitza Klal, that's not grasped by any name, and it's not hinted with any letter or even any point on top of a letter. So now he's going to explain Valpiza, line 10, Yesh Levayer, Gam B'Negeli Natayin Shabbat Shabbos. According to this, we could also explain concerning the idea of delight that's in Shabbos. Shav Shezoi Madrege Niles B'Yosef. Though it's a very high level, ad l'bchinas atik, till the level, all the way to the level of atik yomin, hareze rak k'fi shebchinas atik shayeches, v'lechein imsheches umzgale bebin. It's only the way atik is still already associated with, and therefore because it's associated with, it can come down and become revealed in bina. Still in all, it's not the same like Atik itself. Therefore, this Atik, the delight of Shabbos, therefore it's included in what it says that he concluded the heavens and the earth, that they have an end. The true idea without a boundary. The way it's mamish atik, it's only in Torah mitzvahs. Concerning this, it says that its measure is longer than the earth, or the mitzvahs are very broad, mamish, without any boundary whatsoever. So he concludes, concerning this, the Razal said, whoever davens on Erev Shabbos, in other words, Friday evening, and he says, the Chazal says that the Pasuk considers it as if he becomes a partner to the Eibishter in the creation. It's explained to Amar Chassidus with this same title of the pasuk, the idea of reciting Vaychulu, that is testimony, that a person testifies that the world was created in the 6 days of creation, and he's testifying that on the seventh day the Eibishter rested. It's part of the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Shabbos. Proclaiming and saying that Hashem rested on the seventh day is one of the things of the mitzvah of Shabbos. So now, what we are introducing, since we're fulfilling a mitzvah, so now we have the broadness of the mitzvahs that are very great. We are now having the unbounded aspect of Hashem's very essence. By days and Nasa Shutaf Lakadosh Baruch Hu Ma'aseh Bereishis, through that he becomes a partner to the Eibishter in the creation. Shemamshach Ba'olam Gilui Ein Sof, he's drawing down on the world through doing this mitzvah of Shabbos. He is drawing down to the world the revelation of the Ein Sof. Top of the last page. No, not top of the last page. Sorry. Okay, we'll stop over here.